Hello. It's a beautiful sunny March day. I've come out to the garden to do a little bit of weeding and prepare a couple of beds for sowing seeds. And I'm also going to have a look to see what's ready to harvest. I'm Zorab and this is Byther Farm. In 2020, this was a mixed bed grown as a polyculture, and it had things like chard and beetroot and celeriac in it. And this year I'm going to grow broad beans here. So I need to clear out as many of the weeds as I can, and I'm either going to lift them and put them into a bag, tie the top on the bag and leave that to rot down for a couple of years, or if they're annual weeds and they haven't gone to flower yet, I'll just chop and drop and leave them on the surface to rot down on the surface. So start by clearing the pernicious weeds. And as much as possible, I want to get up as many roots as I can. I'm using the trowel to loosen the roots, but trying to leave the soil as undisturbed as I can. And this is salsify, and the roots are edible, but I don't want this plant here, so that's going. That's a little speedwell, and although it's an annual, it is in flower, and if I chop and drop with the flowers on it, there's a very real chance it will still be able to produce seeds and spread the seeds all over the surface of the bed. The weeds come up quite easily at this time of year. The soil is quite open. It is damp, but it's not either waterlogged or baked hard in the sunshine yet. So it's an ideal time to be removing these weeds. And some you need to be more careful with than others. So this this thistle is it's vicious actually. It's got spikes on the ends of each bit of leaf. It's got them on the front, on the back, all over. They are really unpleasant to grab by the hand, and so we've learnt now to treat them with utmost respect. You can see the way this speedwell grows. It sends out long shoots, flowers on the end, which seed prolifically, and they spread themselves everywhere. And I think the thing about weeds is that you just get to know what they look like over time. You get to recognise the very young leaves, so you can lift them when they're smaller, before they've had a chance to establish. But one of the other things I do is, if I'm not sure, I will leave a plant till it's got, not huge, but fairly large, just in case it's something that I want to keep. That, however, is rose bay willow herb. I don't want to keep that one. Having removed all the weeds, I now need to decide what to do about the vegetables that are still in this bed. And at this end, these are chard. And they kind of look, well, they've been frosted, they've been caught by the winds, they're not looking great. But chard is unlike spinach. Chard leaves are still fine even when the plant is going to seed. And we're now coming up to what's termed as the hungry gap. It's the period following on from the winter crops, but before the summer crops have started producing food. And so anything we can harvest between now and say the end of May are really precious crops. So I'm going to leave the chard in. It will grow and we'll start producing seed heads, but in the meantime we'll still be able to harvest all of these leaves. I think I've said before, I'm not hugely keen on chard leaves. I will eat them hidden in things, but I do like the stems, so I tend to cut the leaf off and chop up the stems and roast those in a tray of mixed roast vegetables with lots of garlic and olive oil. Yum. But I will eat these and I'll chop them into scrambled eggs and also into soups and stews. And at this time of year, if I can come out and get some green leaves or even some red leaves, I really value those fresh ingredients for our cooking. Now at the far end, there's some celeriac. That's almost, a couple of them have actually started rotting. So I'm going to harvest those, take them in and make celeriac mash from those, and I'll get those frozen. And there are a couple of beetroot in here. Now they're still baby beetroot and they will continue growing for a little while longer before they also bolt and start going to seed. So I'm going to leave those in place too. And then the next thing to do is to get some seeds into the ground here. I'm sowing broad beans in here, that's fava beans. I'm sowing them direct. I'm going to take a bit of a gamble with these. This is a variety called Aqueductia Claudia, and really they are best sown in the autumn, but I'm going to take a gamble and sow them now. There are other varieties which are better for sowing at this time of year. And the way I'm going to sow them is I'm actually going to lay them flat on the ground rather than upright, and I'm going to put them in around this chard because I'm just going to bear in mind that when I lift this chard they've got quite big root systems that will disturb the ground around them, so I don't want them to be too disturbed. And in this bed I would normally put 4 rows going across at this end. I'm just doing the centre two to go around the plants, and then for the rest of the bed I will sow. Oh, let's move it over this way a little bit more. So I'm putting them in about 7 inches, 6 to 7 inches apart in the row, and then the rows are around 9 inches to a foot apart. And I don't worry too much about them being exact. And the last thing I want to think about for these beans is some sort of support for when they are growing. And I could use canes pushed into the ground at intervals and thread twine, baling twine or garden twine string in between them. But what I'm going to use is a metal frame that I have that is discarded and slightly broken for other uses, which I'm going to put over here, and then I can use twine or string threaded across it to help support those beans as they're growing. Really, they only need it once they've got to about this tall, but once they've got that tall, it's really hard to put the support framework in for them. So the earlier I can put the basic in, the better. Last year I used this with netting over it to protect some brassicas, which I will do again with the brassicas that I grow later in the season. But right now this will work well for the beans. So I don't need it too far one end or the other. So let's see how far I can move it that way. Oh, I might have put it too close to the edge there. Let's move it in a bit. There we go. Now I can see it's not completely straight. That's also not a problem. So then I've got some sticks across the middle here. Let me just put an eye protector on this end. And the reason I want this cane going down the middle is so that later in the year I can put other canes in to the ground there, fix them in the middle here, which will give me more vertical points at which to wrap the wire around it. And I'm going to be making a crisscross grid of strings going across above the bed for the plants to grow up through. I'm not going to do that now because it's not necessary. I don't have all my cane toppers to protect my eyes out here with me. So I'm quite happy this is now ready to enjoy the warmth of the sun and some rain, and for those to start growing away. And so when you're preparing your beds for this year's plants, don't forget to think about what you can save to tide you over the next few months with fresh vegetables. And so wherever you are in the world and whatever you've got planned for today, I hope it's a good one, and I also hope you'll join me again next time.